This is Tara from Buffyfest, and we're here with Scott Allie, Dark Horse Comics, in anticipation of New York Comic Con. In the hotel, hanging out, chilling this time.
Yeah, I got off my plane about, one cab ride ago.
Right, 4 minutes ago.
4 minutes ago, basically.
Well, thank you for sitting with us.
Thanks.
So, Buffy, season 8 and 9. Now that it's in the rear view, do you have any creative comparison, compare and contrast?
Yeah, the whole thing is a learning experience. I mean, when we did season 8, it had never really been done like that before, to continue a TV show, to take a TV show that was so well established, 7 seasons, where, they got to evolve what they were doing and move it into a different medium. Now everybody's doing season this, season that. IDW just recently launched X-Files season 10, I think.
Right.
And so now I think everybody kind of has their ideas about how it's done, but it was nice to do it first and to just jump in naively and just no holds barred. And every season we're kind of fine-tuning what we're doing based on what we liked or didn't like about what came before. But with season 10, I've gotten completely past the question of it would actually be Angel season whatever. It's
right.
Whatever that is, it's season 10.
It's moved now.
Season 10, and there's one book called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one book called Angel and Faith.
And was there anything you really learned from season 8 that you applied to season 9?
Well, yeah, with season 8, the thing that we learned was that, the thing that we learned the most important thing that's carried over to everything I do with other titles is just when you have a cast as big as the casts that Joss likes to develop, it's really hard to give all the characters good service in 22 pages. What he can do in, 47 minutes once a week is much different than what a comic can do in, 22 pages once a month. And so we had to kind of readjust our attention on individual characters. And in season 8, I think that was one of the things that we probably did, most poorly in terms of taking care of all the important characters. In season 9, I think we did a far better job of it. We knew the choices we were making. For instance, we knew that we were leaving Xander on the table to leave people wondering about him until we got to deal with his story late in the season. And I'm happy with the way a lot of that stuff worked out. The thing we did in season 9 was, in order to take good care of all the characters, we kind of sent them off in different directions. In season 10, we're going to try to do as good or better a job of taking care of the characters, but keep people close.
Bringing them back.
Yeah.
And season 9 really was much more story in a shorter amount of time. 2 years giving more issues.
Yeah. That was great, and having the miniseries, the Willow miniseries
and the
Spike
all together.
miniseries, we did so many more comics in such a shorter period of time, but and I like that, and I think that serves the fan base well to have the greater frequency of books coming out. I don't foresee with season 10 getting into a situation where we'll have one book coming out a week the way we did at one point in season 9. There will be at least a little bit of offshoot books happening, but for the most part, you'll have 2 main titles. The story will be told within them. I think we've got it planned out in such a way that we won't throw a 5-issue solo series onto it the way that we did in season 9. The Willow one was planned out from the very beginning. The Spike one became necessary as we saw things develop. I don't think that'll happen this time, but it might.
But there will be some minis?
There will be at least one
shot?
side project, yeah.
Okay. But in terms of planning, was it more difficult to plan so many issues in 2 years versus the 4 years?
Well, that's a funny question, because a lot more planning went into season 9 than season 8 for me, because in season 8, Joss really kept it all close to his vest. There was a lot I didn't know about. There was a lot of stuff that was just decisions he was making, things that he was planning out, things that he was working out with his writers. I was in the loop on a lot of it, not all of it, but the long-term plan wasn't a shared collaborative experience as much as season 9 was. With season 9, I think because he was getting so crushed with Avengers and everything, he relied on everybody a lot more. We worked together. There was no Season 8 Writers Summit. You know, the Writers
Right.
Summits that we've done, which have really changed my job, changed the way I look at comics so much. The Writers Summits have been incredible. We didn't have one in Season 8.
The
Season
beginning.
8, as I've told before, just one night I was sitting at home checking emails, and the script for Season 8, #1, showed up from Joss, and he's like, hey, here's what we're doing. And that was the beginning of it. Whereas with Season 9, you know, we had the Writers Summit before Season 8 was done being written. We planned stuff out, and similarly with Season 10, there was a Writers Summit in LA with Joss and all those folks that you may have seen in the picture before Andrew and Chris had written final issues of Season 9.
And how was that summit?
It was great. It was really fun. One of the funny things about that summit, you know, Joss is swamped. Joss is very, very busy. So all these people said they wanted to go, and we got a space. We got a really nice space in Hollywood, and everybody shows up, and there weren't enough chairs. Not everybody showed up. Joss wasn't there. Nikki Brendan was there. Jane. You know, like all the comics writers. Victor Gischler came out from Louisiana, I think is where he lives. He came out for it, but we didn't have enough chairs, so I called down. I'm like, hey guys, can you send up more chairs? And they're like, oh, we kind of don't have any extras, but we'll look around. So we're sitting around, and for the first 2 hours or so, people are sitting on the edges of couches and stuff, and we're grinding through a lot of stuff, coming up with a lot of great stuff, and we've kind of really got to a place where we know the basic shape of the season. And then there's a knock at the door. I'm like, oh great, the chairs. And so I run and open the door, and it's Joss. And I was like, oh, this just became a very different, you know, meeting. So he comes in, and then we dove into it, and he fixed a lot of stuff. And he showed us, helped us fix a lot of stuff. The big fixes that happened after he showed up, later in the afternoon, we were all sort of talking about it. And we're like, well, who came up with this thing? And nobody could remember, you know. It just was like, we actually, my wife was there, and she kind of like hosted the whole thing, and she helped keep notes. She helped to keep notes because she's a really fast typist. So she actually later, when she and I looked through the record of it, we could see exactly who came up with what, but nobody in the heat of the moment was keeping track at all, which is great.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys didn't have somebody recording that sucker.
Might have been something.
So Season 10, is it going to be the same length and duration and rollout and all that?
It looks like it's going to be 30 issues. We were going for 25, but as we started like really breaking down the outlines, something wasn't working, and there's a very, very big significant thing that happens kind of in the middle. And as we really worked out the details of the outline, it was clear that that thing needed to happen a little bit further off, and just the math led to 30 issues.
Oh.
Like both series needed 30 issues to do it.
So it'll be a monthly
for
Buffy and Angel of Faith.
Right.
Same deal.
Same deal, 5 issues longer. And it's just, that's what the story needed. You know, like we roughly had it in our heads to just stick to 25 because we felt like 25 worked really well, but the story needs it. We have to rush some part of it to do it in 25, so we want to just let it breathe.
Cool. Now, in Season 9,
Mm-hmm.
there was some new faces, but there was a lot of throwback characters. Illyria, Wolfman Hard, Igon. Is it a challenge to balance the creative need for like new villains along with the fan demands for like some throwbacks?
You know, it's really not just fan demands for the throwbacks. Part of how I look at that, like, these characters really mean something to each other. Like, they mean something to the readers, but they mean something to each other. So trying to tell these kind of stories, Joss's kind of stories, there was a thing he said to me one time when we were talking about a situation we had to resolve with an artist that we both worked closely with. And I said, well, you know, like, and it was a little bit of, not bad news, but just not the happiest information to pass on. And I said, this is a long time ago, I said, well, you know, as editor, I feel like it's my job to do this, but I'm kind of getting the feeling maybe you want to be the one to do it. And he's like, well, yeah, you know, it's all about relationships, so I should do it. And that all about relationships was like just one of those little moments where I'm like, those words kind of covers everything about this whole deal.
Sure.
You know, it's like the relationships
tagline was
between
born.
these. Well, yeah, it's the relationships between these writers. Like, how is it that we can, like, for the Writers' Summit, Jane was there, Drew Greenberg was there, Andrew Shambliss was there. None of them are slated to write anything in season 10 right now, but they all wanted to be there for the day. They wanted to be a part of it, and we have these mini Writers' Summits over the phone with Victor and Christos, me and Freddie, and Andrew's been there for a few of those. I think he's only missed one. He's not getting paid. He's not getting anything out of doing it, but he's there because he cares about this stuff and because we all have this great working relationship. It's all about relationships. Similarly, between the characters, like, if we throw, there is a creative impulse to, like, create new crazy characters and get them in there and make them count.
Sure.
But you kind of get more story if there's somebody laying around, is the way I think of it. I mean, the way Whistler came into season 8 in the tiny little way that he did, and if you remember in the one shot that Jane wrote, was Jane and I were brainstorming that story. I mean, it was her story, but she was like telling me what she wanted to do, and she said, I feel like I need somebody for Angel to be talking to. Angel, who at that point was about to be revealed as Twilight.
Right.
I feel like I need someone for him to talk to, so I should create, we were talking about her potentially creating somebody that would be this, like, valued confidant. But it was like, well, isn't the reader going to understand the character as a more valued confidant if they already know him to be that?
Mm-hmm.
And that was where we came up with the idea to use Whistler, and we got into, we called Joss or emailed Joss and said, hey, can we use Whistler for this? And he said, sure. And, Whistler's had a more significant role since then, obviously. But, Jane could have made somebody up. She could have made up a great character, but using Whistler, it's almost like it's shorthand. Yeah, it's almost like it's shorthand for the viewer, for the reader. Oh, I get it. I know what this relationship is.
Right.
And similarly, if you meet a villain and you dig up an old character that maybe wasn't a villain, but now they're going to be, the reader already brings a ton of baggage to it in a good way, in the way that you want. With us, when it's a question of, okay, we need a character to do a particular thing, is there a character kind of laying around that would be really meaningful? And that's the better one to go for. And if there's not the right character, then you do make them up. Like Pearl and Nash were inventions that I think were fantastic, and we kind of retconned them in by saying, oh yeah, they were actually sort of there behind the scenes with Twilight. But I'm very happy with what Chris created there, and the aunts were amazing.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, and they're going to be around still. They'll be around in Angel and Faith. But with the aunts, they were characters that Joss had created, so to speak, but never had a chance to really put out there. So it's a balancing act.
Season 9, the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you not choose to cross them over when they were all in England? Such a tease.
We talked about that. It really came down to at one point we're like, wait a minute, everybody's
They're
in
all
England.
there.
Like, how
and they
far
spoke
apart?
about it in the story. Like, the characters were aware, so.
Yeah, and and we know that Willow. We talked about at one point. We're like, okay, so wait a minute. Angel and Faith and the aunts are living in Giles's city house, and I believe we know from the TV show that the Deeper Well is relatively close to Giles's country house,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mm-hmm. So we're like, well, what if we gave Angel and Faith and company an excuse to go out to the country house at the same time that the American cast, as it were, was heading to the Deeper Well? We talked about it, but it was like, no, these books have their own stories to tell, and we decided not to do it, in part because of the thing that I hate in comics, and a reason why I don't read as many mainstream comics as I sometimes have an impulse to do, is that, like, if I'm reading Captain America or whatever I'm reading, I want to be able to read that book and love it, and I don't want to suddenly get to, certainly not the climax of a major story, and realize, oh, I haven't been reading Hawkeye for the last year. I don't understand what's happening all of a sudden. So with these interconnected books, and it's the same with the Mignola-verse, with these interconnected books, it's a tough balancing act to say we want these characters to live in the same world and to be impacted by the same things, but we don't want to abuse the readers too much by requiring that they read, both books. And you know, we did little things like in season 9, you know, those Campbell soup ads,
Yes.
the tin can, like those ads. I think they first started appearing in the Angel and Faith comic, and then you started seeing them in the Buffy comic, and then they became a real plot point in the Buffy comic. So that was like little, you know, Easter egg crossover stuff. And we were aware, and we talked about, and I don't know that this will ever be a plot point, but we talked about the idea that because the Buffy cast was doing what they were doing in the Deeper Well, that impacted what happened in Magic Town. Like maybe Magic Town wouldn't have blown up in London in Angel and Faith. Maybe that climax wouldn't have been as explosive if you didn't have Buffy and company sticking a seed in the ground over in the Deeper Well. We talked about that. We all kind of felt like that was true, but it was like, well, what do? Do you have like Faith show up and say, hey dudes, guess what? You know, so it was like, in our minds, that was a crossover. In our minds, those events did impact each other. We talked about how you might show that to the reader, and it just felt like nerd service. It didn't feel like the right way to tell a story. It just felt like, you know, for anyone who would want to be assured that these worlds are deeply connected, there you go. But is that really what we want to do story-wise? You know, and it wasn't, so we didn't do it. But in our heads, there was a connection between those events.
Fair enough. So that was season 9. Season 10. We have on Buffy, we have Andrew's departing.
Yep.
And Christos Gage is taking over as writer. And the artist is Rebecca Isaacs, which everyone will be very excited about.
Yep.
And then we have Victor over on Angel, Angel and Faith.
Yep.
Who's the artist for that?
Will Conrad.
Will Conrad.
Now, Will was an artist. I believe I gave him his first work. Will is a Brazilian artist. I think his first job was inking Buffy over Cliff Richards. I believe that was his first professional work. And Will was always great, and I liked Will a lot. And so we hired him to draw the first 2 Serenity miniseries. So Better Days and Those Left Behind were both penciled by Will Conrad. And fantastic, he did a great job. He's been doing amazing work for Marvel and DC for a while. In fact, when Victor Gischler, when I was starting to really study up on his stuff, his agent sent me a bunch of, I think, X-Men books. And I was reading them, and I would pick up the next issue, and I'm like, oh my god, this looks so good. Like, it's well written, but it looks so damn good. Who drew it? Will Conrad. And then I get the next one, and I kind of forget that it's Will, and wow, this looks great. Who is it? It's Will Conrad. Christ, I gotta get this guy back. So I started kind of feeling that out. Around the time that we hired Victor to do Spike, all the way back then, I started feeling things out with Will, and he was very happy and very busy at times at Marvel, at times at DC. He was really happy with all that stuff, but I just made it really clear how much I wanted him back, and everybody felt the same way. And then fortunately, I was in Argentina this summer for a convention, and he was there, so we got to spend a bunch of time together. I had a 4-hour bus ride, that's how fancy it was. But it was great because I got to spend time with some of my favorite artists, including Will. We spent a lot of time together. We talked about what season 10 was going to be like.
Post-Summit?
Yeah, this was just in like August.
Oh.
And it was funny because Sierra and Freddie and I, we keep talking about, okay, so Rebecca's drawn this, George's has drawn Serenity. Who's going to draw Angel and Faith? Well, I want Will Conrad. Will keep saying no. I'm like, yeah, but all right, well, I'll look at other guys. And then I would look at other art and not like any of it, and like, I'm going to try Will again. And then I got to see him. And I think if I hadn't seen him in August, it wouldn't have happened. But we spent the time together, we talked about it.
Like kismet.
It was lucky. Eduardo Rizzo throws a show in Argentina, and he invited me down. So Eduardo Rizzo is a big part of why I get to have the artist I want on Angel and Faith.
Nice. Now, Angel and Faith. So Faith is still on this book.
Yep.
Do we know, can you give any hints as to what she's going to be doing over there? Is she with Angel? Is she elsewhere?
She is not with Angel. Angel and Faith was a certain kind of book last season, and you know, it was Joss's idea to make it Angel and Faith, and to figure out the dynamic between them. Much of it came from him, and then well executed by Christos. But in season 9 they had one job to do. They had one thing to do, and they were kind of coming at it from different angles, but it was really one thing that they were doing together, and that thing got done. And that thing is little Giles, who made his intentions clear that he's going to go to the States to hang out with Buffy, and so their job is done, and so their relationship is going to be totally different. It's the ampersand in the middle of the logo means a different thing in season 10 than it meant in season 9. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Cool. And Spike. So is he going to be in any particular book? Is he on his own?
At the beginning, Spike fans are going to think I'm a liar, but at the beginning of season 9, I said Spike's going to be in Buffy's book because that's what we think is right, and that's what Joss wants. That's where Joss thinks the character makes the best sense. And that's the plan in season 10, and I think this time we're going to be able to actually do it. This time, I think we have a better plan for what that all means and where it's all going.
So he's going to be in Buffy's book?
Yeah.
He's not on his own book?
Correct.
Okay. It's going to be very clear.
Yeah, I know. Very clear.
So much of season 9 was about undoing season 8, or the consequences, the worst ramifications of season 8 anyway. Where does that leave you with the new conflicts for season 10 now that that's kind of closed?
Well, there's still a lot, they've been changing the world radically in these last couple of seasons, and there's still repercussions for that. That things are going to be with the seed, with like the nascent seed planted in the deeper well, and magic starting to return. Things are significantly different in the world, and Buffy did that. Buffy and Willow and Creed did that, and there's some things they're going to have to deal with that. But it won't be, just like I don't think season 9 was too much about looking back at season 8. You're dealing with the ramifications, but you're not totally focused on what happened yesterday.
Sure.
A lot of it, though, is about rebuilding relationships. A lot of it is about redefining who our main characters in the Buffy book are to one another. That's really important. It's essential to who those characters are, is who they are to each other, and what their sense of family and relationship is. Like, there's going to be a lot of exploring that.
Bringing the Scoobs back.
Bringing the Scoobs back, and kind of bringing them back maybe in a way that's different from what they've been before, but they're also older. They've been through so much, so they need to, it's healthy to redefine yourself. It's healthy to redefine yourself in relationship to one another, but it's important for these characters to be together. They want to be together, and in season 9 they weren't all that together. Season 10, they're going to find the new way to be together.
Regarding vampires.
Yes.
So all the rules changed at the beginning of season 9. It appears they've changed again now because they're not brainless zombies anymore, and they're kind of daywalking and shape-shifting. Can you give us a hint about what this new species of vamp is going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's that scene at the end of 25. That was a bit that was really worked out in the weeks leading up to the summit, and then at the summit. The last issues of season 9 were written after the season 10 summit, so that they could be written really with an eye toward setting up, wrapping things up to the extent we want them wrapped up, and then setting things up for next season. So that scene at the end there was meant, hopefully what it accomplished was showing people that sort of, for the moment, all bets are off with vampires. What they've been before, what they've been recently, you need to wait and see where it's at, and we'll start to see that straight away in issue 1 of Buffy.
Oh. Well, that's good. That's a good little hint. I love Giles' resurrection outcome. Little Giles.
Yeah.
Will the young Giles be sharing a room with Billy since he has that pesky hormonal problem?
Well, one of the things we're doing, we are going to move some characters around. All I'll say about that is that there was a point in the Writers' Summit where we were working out some logistical things, and Joss broke out into song, singing the Friends theme song. So
get out.
So yeah.
Come on, you don't have video of this?
It was a great moment. I know. Now you're really making me regret that.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
Next time we'll bring a Buffyfest cameraman.
Okay, that'd be good. You guys would be up for that, right?
Yeah, totally. And how about Dawn? Willow said something feels different now.
Yeah.
When she was doing the magic, was she referring to when Dawn was like in the ether? Was she referring to Dawn being different now, or just the general re-magicking of the seed?
The general remagicking of the seed, I gotta write that down with one of my red Sharpies. But the general remagicking of the seed is definitely different. And
Right.
everybody is feeling that, and everyone will be commenting on that. Things are also different with Dawn.
Is she still the key?
I'm not gonna say that.
Cool, but I feel like I almost confused you and got you to say.
You did almost get me to say something. The funny thing is, like, there's certain things like the key and Shanshu that are like, everything's changed,
Right.
and those things don't mean what they meant before. But Dawn is different. What she went through at the end of season 9 and what has changed in the world leave us with a different Dawn, and both Willow and Xander perceive that. At the end of season.
Yeah,
9.
they do. Are we going to see a little bit of a different? Is it going to affect the relationship between her and Xander?
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot that's affecting it. I mean, there's what Xander did, but there's a lot that's going to change and evolve that relationship. But a lot of the relationships are going to be new by the end or by the midway point of season 10. That one in particular is definitely going through a lot.
And how about Nadira? Did she survive?
Well, we see Nadira in 25 looking really bad. Part of her face seems to be glowing green.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find out what all that's about, and exactly what that meant, what that did to her. Everything that happened in Magic Town sort of affected characters differently. Nadira has been through a terrible journey, from her, getting to know Faith and then getting to know Angel, which she never wanted to do. And she is definitely part of the fallout of seasons 8, season 9, and finding out what happened to her in season 9 is going to be an important part before too long in season 10.
So we'll definitely be seeing more of her, obviously.
Yes.
Now, is there going to be any guests this season? Guest writers?
Right now, plans are mostly just about Chris and Victor. Andrew, Jane, Drew Greenberg, we've talked about those guys coming in at some point, but there's nothing nailed down. There's one guest writer more nailed down than others that hasn't been announced, that we're not ready to announce yet. That's going to be really cool. But yeah, so one guest writer and then one other side project from another writer. So some cool stuff coming. But for the monthlies, the focus will heavily be on, Victor and Christos.
Cool. So Joss, he made the surprise at the summit.
Right.
How much involvement is he having in season 10 so far?
It's similar to season 9. I don't think that he'll be writing anything. Probably he's so buried between his Marvel,
Sure.
Hollywood commitments. So he's guiding it, all the big stuff. Like a lot of, I would say more of the big plans of season 10 were worked out at this summit than we worked out at the previous summit. We knew how to do it better, we knew what it was going to be like, and so we were able to really nail stuff down. It was ridiculous how productive we were in the 5 or 6 hours that we spent in that room. So like the big pieces were all kind of figured out there, and then I was lucky that he basically just planned a vacation to Seattle and Portland a couple of months ago, which was incredible timing, and I only found out about it like a week before it happened. But it was great timing because we'd gotten the outlines from Chris and Victor. Something I gotta be careful not to say too much, but we'd gotten the outlines from those two guys. We'd had a phone call with Andrew, Victor, Chris, where we talked through a lot of season 10 stuff. And then suddenly Joss was in town. So it was like, great, a lot of the stuff that we were stuck on, or a lot of the big ideas that we had that we were like, ugh, I don't know if we can do that. I got a bunch of time to just walk the streets of Portland. It was summertime, so it was dry. Just walk around Portland and work it out. And there was one very big thing that we were having trouble with about Angel. There was one thing about Angel that we just like, we couldn't quite figure out what the right way to go was.
Right.
And so I got to have a really long talk face to face with Joss about that. And we nailed it down, and then when I brought it back to the writers that week, we figured it out. We took what he had told me to do and figured out how to make it work in conjunction with everything else happening. So the timing was good there. And you know, at this point, it's so much about the details. Whenever a big detail comes up, I run it by him. Usually, I've been surprised because I know how busy he is. I've been surprised at how quickly he gets back to us. But yeah, he's been able to chime in on the season 10 stuff and also Serenity. Although with Serenity, it's more sort of between him and Zach, and Zach just turns in great scripts.
So Serenity, where is Serenity?
Where is it? That's
Where
what
is it?
everybody's asking.
I know.
Everybody's
Where is it?
asking. Really, the question is, why wasn't Dark Horse doing a Serenity comic 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Sure.
That when this whole Where's Serenity marketing campaign came up, when I was reading the first issue script from Zach, and in that script, no end of characters, including crew members, are saying, "Where's Serenity?" And as I was reading the script, and it was on a flight somewhere, I remember it was on a flight, I was reading the script on a flight, and it was great, and I love how Zach writes these characters. And yeah, the theme of where the hell are they, in the wake of the film, in the wake of what they did, they're hiding out deeper than they ever had to hide out before. Like, kidnapping, you know, Simon kidnapping River was nothing compared to what they did when they revealed the truth about Miranda.
Sure.
You know, so, so the
Couldn't help myself.
So as I was reading the script, yeah, like, where is it? Everybody's asking where it is. And as I read that, all I could think is, there's a lot of Firefly fans saying, where the hell are the comics?
Right.
And I was like, okay,
So it's
yeah,
a bigger,
so
more meta.
it's a meta
Where the
question,
hell is
for sure.
Serenity
Where the
all
hell
this
is it?
time?
And it's finally, you know, it's in the emails. It's I want to do a Jimmy Stewart impression, but I can't. It's in the emails between Laura Martin and Carl Story and Georges and Dan Dos Santos.
It's
and
finally
Zach.
here.
It's coming. The first issue is done. I think as of today we have almost all the colors for the first issue. It looks gorgeous. You saw a little.
I did. It looks
while ago.
fabulous.
It's great. George's in every interview, George's talks about how hard the likenesses are, or every chance he gets, he talks about how difficult the likenesses are. But I think he's doing a great job.
I mean, it seems like he's captured them very
Yeah,
well.
I love what he's doing. I love it. The cover artist on the book, Dan Dos Santos, he did the cover to the Free Comic Book Day thing we did a couple of years ago when Fabio Moon drew a story that Zach wrote.
Yes.
And Dan is just this amazing paperback cover artist that I just love his work. I know him through this painting, in like a week-long intensive painting seminar that I'm a part of every couple of years in Massachusetts.
Really?
With these amazing painters, and I get to be on the faculty as like the editor. I get to be the guy in the room who can't paint at all, but says, maybe I'll hire you if you're good.
Cool.
But mostly I've managed to turn it into an opportunity to hire Dan Dos Santos doing these Serenity covers. The cover artist that you asked about when we were talking before, on Angel and Faith, Scott Fisher,
Yeah.
is also a faculty member at this illustrators master's class that I'm a part of. And yeah, I've got to know these guys through that, and I love their work, and I'm happy to bring it into the comics world. They all grew up as comics fans, but then found much more lucrative careers doing paperback and hardcover book covers.
Commercial, yeah.
And but they love comics, and so I'm lucky enough to be friends with them and to be able to get them to do these books.
Great.
Yeah.
And the leaf on the wind symbolism on the Where's Serenity campaign?
Well, the
Where's
title.
Serenity campaign?
Yeah, Where's Serenity? Yeah, that was, I knew before I ever had a script, I knew very early in the process that Zach wanted to call the story Leaves on the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Where's Serenity? I thought a leaf would be a nice tip of the hat to the subtitle, you know. When we first teased that we'd be doing New Serenity, I think it's San Diego.
Mhm.
I mean, that was the first like hard tease.
Yeah, a couple of little teasers before that.
Right, we had that graphic with the leaf, and I had asked George's to draw the leaf, and give me this leaf, and I think somebody in the house was like, well, if George's draws the leaf, then people are going to know that he's drawing the book, and you won't be able to announce that later. I'm like, they're not going to be able to recognize his
From a leaf.
art from a leaf. But then later, when we first started the teaser campaign, we showed his a panel of the ship, and I thought, a really like sharp Buffy reader might recognize his art style from that, and nobody did. And then later, when we posted the first page of the interiors with characters in it, not characters from the show or the film, but new characters, our own characters.
Right.
We posted that, and I thought, okay, well now they're totally going to know. They're going to see how he draws people, and they're going to know it's George's. And they still didn't.
Well, it does look a little different.
It looks a little different, and especially with the coloring. The coloring's a lot different. Laura Martin is a friend of George's from Atlanta, and Carl Story is also from down there. And we've got, just incredible inker, incredible colorist. We've got an incredible team on this thing. Really just like between covers and the story pencils and everybody on the book is just absolutely top notch, and we're lucky to have them. And George's, Carl, and Laura are really good friends, and so it's nice to have an art team that's like this in sync. They just know exactly what each other wants, I think.
It looks gorgeous.
Thanks.
So, Leaves on the Wind, but Wash is not in it, or is he in it?
Yeah, no. Wash is dead. Book is dead.
Wash is dead.
Wash is dead. I know, it's terrible. I saw somebody on Twitter, there was a big story on Nerdist today where they interviewed Zach, and I saw somebody on Twitter reply to me or something saying that they were furious that this takes place after the movie because they don't want to read it if Wash and Book aren't in it. I'm like, wow, that's
not going to
that's
resurrect
extreme,
them.
but this
not
is
Buffy.
Right. This is very much taking place after the movie. It's these guys were on the run in the first place. They were always outlaws. They saw themselves as outlaws. They had this fugitive with them, River, and Simon, I guess, is also a fugitive. But they're in a much worse situation after. That's the whole Where's Serenity, teaser campaign. The whole galaxy's looking for him. Everybody's looking for him. The Alliance is furious because they revealed Miranda. But the sort of new generation of rebels, the sort of proto-browncoats, want to find Mal too because he's a hero to them. He's either hero or villain to everybody, and everybody wants to know where these guys are. And more than ever, these guys need to hide out because, man, there's a lot of heat on them. So it's a great standalone story what Zach's done. And just today I was working on he does an incredible job in the first 8 pages of the comic of really setting things up and making sure you're up to speed and making it really clear that this is post-film. But I just felt, I really think we need something on the inside front cover that just catches readers up for people who, are, the movie came out a long time ago and the show came out longer. So just to catch people up on kind of where these characters are at and really broadly, generally who these characters are. So I wrote this short paragraph that kind of summarizes the movie, kind of summarizes the concept, run it past Zach, see if he can do a better job of what I did. And yeah, just really want to make it clear that this is the sequel to the film, finding these characters in a much different space. It's also, of course, the sequel to the one shot that Patton Oswalt wrote. Patton Oswalt wrote, where he had a very specific idea for a story he wanted to tell, and Joss said, "That's great. The one thing I need you to do, Zoe's pregnant."
Right.
And
so this is follow up to that story.
Follow up to that story. Follow up to the film.
So it comes out in January.
Yep.
It's 6 issues.
Right.
Is it going to be more than 6 issues?
No, it's with Zach's commitments and everything, it's going to be 6 issues, and it is my hope that he will want to write another one before long.
So it'll be a season of 6 and perhaps more seasons.
Yeah, and we're not calling it a season. It's different. Like what we think of as a season is a bigger story. This is just a great mini-series.
That was my word.
That was your.
Take it away.
Yeah. No, this is just. And what season would it be? Oh my God, it'd be.
Right, everyone will yell. Yeah.
Right. But no, it's it's just a 6-issue story, and it's a great story with a killer ending, and we'll get a really nice collection out of it, and then hopefully we'll do another one. At one point, there was a rumor. I don't know how this rumor got started, but there was a rumor at some point that IDW was going to do Firefly as a monthly comic, and I heard that a couple of years ago at Dragon Con or something, and there was nothing to it, but it made me ask Joss, well, would you want a monthly Firefly comic? And he said, no, I like Buffy being monthly. I think for now, it makes more sense for Serenity or Firefly to be, we treat it like miniseries and graphic novels, and that's what it is for now.
Gotcha. And speaking of Joss, so Zach had mentioned that he had a little input. How much input does he have?
Well, like I say, on Serenity, it's mostly between them. Like with Angel and Faith and Buffy, it's this real group collaborative process that's amazing and rewarding and great. That's usually not how it's done in comics. With Serenity, those two have worked it out to the degree that they've worked it out, and Zach turns in scripts, and I give him notes, I edit the scripts and everything, although I think the last script, issue 4, was like the least notes I could possibly have on a script.
Really?
I love how he writes these characters. The dramatic structure of every issue is so good. And the voices of the characters, I just think he does such a remarkable job. For a guy that never wrote on the show, we could not ask for a better writer on this thing in terms of getting the characters. He was never there for the show, I don't believe.
That was probably like a baby.
Yeah, well, he's not that young. But he wasn't, I think he was, I don't think he'd broken into TV yet, I'm not sure. But whatever the case, he wasn't part of the writing staff, but he knows these characters. He's got an affection for these characters that he can't beat. And
so you probably don't really know how much, because him and Joss probably
exactly. I don't know.
in their heads. I mean, I imagine Joss has limitless Firefly scripts in his head, but
Yeah.
unrealized.
But I think this story, the Shepherd's Tale, the Shepherd's Tale book that we did, that was Joss's story that Zach just wrote the hell out of and just did a great job. But that was Joss's story. He outlined it. It was really the story he wanted told, and then Zach did an incredible job with it. With Leaves on the Wind, it's probably more than half Zach's story as opposed to a story that Joss is telling him to tell. This is Zach's take on the characters, and those two sort of working it out. But yeah, like I say, the input that Joss has is just between the bros.
Right, the bros. Okay, so Abe Sapien, who's your baby right now, spin-off of Hellboy. Is it difficult being like El Jefe, editor-in-chief overall, while writing a story of your own? This intimate way?
Only in terms of like the time that everything takes, but the cool thing, it's just like when I was writing season 8 with Joss, and then the little bit of season 9 that I wrote, the tail end of season 8 and a little bit of season 9. Joss was kind of my editor on those scripts, and Mignola is my editor on this stuff, and so Mignola is kind of guiding me, taking me where I need to go. I've also, my sort of co-editor on all the Mignola stuff is Daniel Shavin, who, funny enough, is the younger brother of Michael Shavin, the novelist. Dan's my primary sounding board on a daily basis. So I've got this great network between Dan, John Arcudi, who wrote Abe for many years in BPOD, and Mignola, who created him, of kind of bouncing the stories off of them, and they help a lot. But, part of how I look at editing comics or writing comics is like, you're just trying to shape the thing. The artist is doing such a significant part of the job that the editor, the writer, the people working on the book with them is shaping this story. And so I tend to be a pretty hands-on editor, which is why I said, in the Serenity part that this latest issue I gave Zach like the least number of notes I know how to give, because I don't know how to stop in a way. So I'm very involved in the process on a lot of the comics that I edit, so it's like working with the artists at Sebastian and Max Fiamara, the artists on Abe Sapien, and being their writer is just a more immersive way of doing it. So, and I love it, and it's like writing Abe with Mignola is like I've been lucky in a few instances in my career to have work for hire jobs like this, where I'm writing a story that if I come up with my own original thing, like I did my original book, Devil's Footprints, years ago, and Exervia, those were things that I came up that I made up all by myself. With Abe, I mean, not to take, I don't mean at all to take away from Mike, but what I mean is like, this is something I wish I could have come up with.
Right.
A lot of the times when you take a work for hire
You're such a
writing
fan.
gig, yeah, and it's exactly the like milieu that I want to work in. A lot of the times when you take a work for hire writing gig, you're trying to fit yourself into another box.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, I need the money and I really want to write, you know, whatever. I really want to write this book, but I need to kind of like shape myself to fit it. One of the reasons I never wanted to pursue freelance writing in comics is because I never loved superheroes enough, you know? And most of the paying gigs in comics as a writer, you're writing superheroes. And I never felt like I understood them enough, I never felt like I loved them enough to really get inside and write that stuff.
Sure.
Without, you know, really, you know, craning my neck to get there. With the Whedon stuff, I feel like it's like one step away from what I naturally do or where I would naturally go.
Like
it's a place I
light.
like to be, but and a place that I've learned so much from. But I'm not writing anything in season 10 right now. I didn't think I would in season 9, and then I did, but I'm pretty sure I won't in season 10. I'd love to, but I'm very happy being totally focused on Abe and playing around in this much kind of darker, you know, nastier world where the monsters are, you know, really unattractive. The monsters in Buffy tend to be attractive.
Well, not all of them,
No,
but sure.
Clem.
But, aw. There is some overlap between the fandoms of Hellboy and Buffy, and they're dealing with similar storyline right now, which is a world that's getting used to the existence of monsters while simultaneously being overrun by those monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Is it ever problematic to pick and choose what you like to do on each book? Like, are you ever like, oh man, I was just about to do that on Abe, and now we're doing it on Buffy?
You know, one little thing like that was, I mean, not exactly what you're talking about, but one little thing like that was when in Buffy, we did those tin can signs, those ads for the company that Buffy briefly worked for, and we planted them in the backgrounds of the Angel comics and in the backgrounds of the Buffy comics. We did a similar thing with this company that's really partly responsible for the end of the world in BPRD, where we had their billboards and stuff like in the backgrounds of some panels, and you know, but like the tone and the character arcs are so different from a Mignola book to a Whedon book that that hasn't really come up. I could imagine it coming up, but it hasn't really.
Well, that's lucky.
You know, one thing that did feel, there's been a couple times, and I can think of one specific, where an idea felt to me like it was a little too similar between one line and another, and I went to the creator, you know, Joss or Mike, and said, hey, and in both cases that I can remember, they were like, yeah, I don't think it's that close, and I was like, all right, cool, you know, like that's fine, and it's all about the execution. There's a book I did called The Umbrella Academy, Gerard Way wrote, and in that book, one of the characters goes through this screwed up thing and comes out of it a 10-year-old boy. And so when we came up with the idea, and it was specifically Joss who came up with the idea to have Giles show up as a 10-year-old boy, I was like, well, just, you know, don't forget, we kind of did something similar in Umbrella, and he's like, and we talked about it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, I think it's different.
It's like, I don't care, I want Giles to be a little boy.
So it was like,
I don't
yeah,
even know
it's
what
a
the
little
psychology
similar.
behind that is.
It's kind of similar, but
but it's not a problem.
yeah, I mean, it's like if you're not telling the exact same story, if you're not blatantly swiping an idea, then there is going to be a little bit of exploring the same terrain. And if you explore it really differently, then you're telling a different story, and that's good.
Abe, how many more issues before Abe finally cracks and just destroys humanity as prophecy?
What issue just came out? No, I don't know. This series is going to go on for a little while. Abe is really wrestling with this whole thing. People think that he's bringing about the end of the world, and he is firmly against that notion, but he's also sort of in denial about that notion right now. A scientist, which Abe sort of considers himself, a scientist should sort of like pose a question and then really go about exploring what the answer to it is. right now, Abe is doing what I consider to kind of be bad science, where he knows what the question is, he's already decided what the answer is, and now he just wants to prove it, which means he's not really open to the other side of the question.
Obsessed, maybe.
And he needs to get to a point where he acknowledges the other possibility a little bit more, and right now he's not doing that.
Well, which leads me to my next question, which Abe's journey is becoming less about finding what he was looking for and more about figuring out what he should be looking for along the way. What do you want most for him to find in the end?
Well, I know what he finds, and I don't know that it's really what I want for him, what you want for him is to be honest with himself and to really seek out the truth and to really be the hero that he's supposed to be. And he can't fully be that hero, no matter what the truth is, unless he faces the truth. So I want him to find the answers to everything he's looking for, and I want him to kind of remove his own obstacles to finding those answers. What is he? Why is he the way he is? Why did he recently change from one very bizarre creature, the Black Lagoon guy, to an even less human-looking thing? He needs to find out why, and he needs to stop just saying, I know it's not true. I'm going to prove it by fighting monsters. If I kill enough bad guys, then clearly I'm a good guy, right? And it's like, I don't know that that's true.
That's not really how it works.
Yeah.
So just to finalize, just to finish up, the CBLDF project is out, and it seems to be very well received. Is the success of that kind of project more professionally satisfying because you put together something great, or more satisfying because you put something together that's so important for such an important issue?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, to me, like, I'm so pleased with the work that everybody did and the way that it all fits together. The way, like, I love putting together anthologies. I used to do it quite a bit, and I don't really get to do it anymore. So when they asked me to do this, it was at Emerald City Comic Con just earlier this year. It was 2 in the morning in the bar, and Eric Stevenson, the publisher of Image, we stumbled into each other, and he said, "Hey, we were thinking about having you do this." And I was like, wow, that'd be great. I would love to do that. I've always tried to do little things that I was able to do to support the fund. The fund, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, raises money to protect creators, retailers, and readers, more often than not readers these days, I think, to protect them in First Amendment.
Yeah, it's a great cause.
And it's based here in New York. It's a great group, and it's really important, and it's really important to the history of comic books. And I've tried to contribute in different ways, but this was the way that I'll always feel most proud of, to put together a book that hopefully they sell a lot of, raise a lot of money, it came out in October. It came out at the beginning of October. Because of that, or just because of who I am, the book is very sort of heavily leaning toward horror. I got some great horror comics by different people, and then some non-horror stuff as well. But everybody did really good work, and I hope it raises a lot of money. And the fund is the point, and the money that it raises is the point. But the thing that I kind of like take home at night is the book that we did, and the work that everybody did, and everybody did it for free, which is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Thanks.
And congrats about everything. We're super excited for season 10, Serenity, and thank you so much for sitting with us.
Thank you.